So what do we mean when we talk about parental rejection? Well, let me tell you a little bit about what this is. In short, it is the absence or the significant withdrawal of warmth, affection, love from parents towards their children. And this could lead to negative behavior and emotions ranging from bullying to anxiety. Let's bring in Kerry Rudman from Brain Harmonics. She's a neurofeedback therapist there. Good morning, Kerry. Thank you very much for your time. You've written extensively on the kind of trauma experienced when a child is rejected by a parent. Can you firstly unpack what exactly we mean? I gave a summation, but it would be more better hearing it exactly from the expert. What do we mean when we talk about parental rejection? What exactly is it?
So I think that when we are born and when we're really little, we get our nurturing from our mothers. That gives us our sense of worth, and knowing that we can be loved in the world. When we get acknowledged by our fathers, and when we do and we are seen and acknowledged by our fathers, it gives us self-confidence and helps us to be in the world. When these things are lacking, what happens in your brain is we actually change our neurotransmitters and our neurochemistry in our brain. And there's studies that show that in children specifically, at the ages that they went through certain traumas, their brain actually stops growing at that age, at a certain brain lobe, which shows how impactful that trauma really can be. What it does is when you go through neglect, your brain experiences abandonment, and it throws you into freeze mode as a coping strategy. And freeze means that you're not able to say no to people. Your boundaries are often really bad. So what happens is when we grow up, we hold on to those patterns as a norm. And then you're in a working environment and people start overstepping boundaries. They start taking from you. It's almost like you've got a neon sign on your forehead that says to everybody, I'm not going to say no. So they come for you. Please do all these extra things for me. Do extra work. Please lend me money. Please. They just keep taking. And it's very hard for a person in freeze to say no. The opposite of that is that people see the world as not being a very safe place. And that throws their brain into fight or flight. So it obviously affects every relationship that we have in the world with everybody around us, our partners, our children, and it leads to unhealthy coping strategies.
So essentially, this shapes a person's sense of self well into adulthood. So if it's a child, they could start expressing it by perhaps being a bully or even more reserved in school, and like you say, having no boundaries, allowing people to push them over. So what would be the solution in this instance? Because many of us are reading up on conscious parenting right now, that we need to be present, and in most instances, don't blame the child, but try and look inward and see how you can approach this better. Is this not a phase or something that we're all trying out now? Is it really something that has proven to be beneficial? Because most of us as parents now are really trying to be fully present in our parenting and observing how our children respond to the manner in which we parent them.
Absolutely. I think it's a double-edged sword, because even when a parent is really, really trying to be conscious and be doing all that they can, they come from their childhood trauma. So often it's not a conscious thing. They're reenacting their unmet needs. So it is a really, really hard thing to just solve. And I think that acting like you're there for your child when you're really not feeling it, a child will pick the emotions up and still feel neglected, regardless of your actions.
My soul.
So the only way that I know of how to change that is through neurofeedback, because changing the actual patterns can help you cope with the new stuff. It's never going to take the trauma away, and I don't think any healing modality out there will take any of the trauma away. But how you see it and how you then cope with new traumas is what really is going to count.
Because that was honestly going to be my next question, that in most instances we're told that we as parents are the first self-esteem project in our children's life, that we need to be solid, we need to ourselves have been parented right to be better parents. And you're saying it's often then difficult to pour out of a cup that is half empty yourself, but you're saying through these neuro patterns, we can still make a difference in a young person's life by just being present now that we know of the impact it has on a child.
Absolutely. There's an irony that if it's the parent who's been through trauma or who's now initiating new trauma on the child, is that the irony is that you keep re-initiating that same situation, even if you consciously try not to. And the reason why is your brain gets hardwired into certain patterns. So if you're in a pattern of fight or flight, no matter how much you try to be calm and try not to let certain things irritate you or frustrate you, every time something pushes that button, it's an automatic response. And then people feel terrible afterwards. So trying to calm that response down means that you don't have to get to that point as a parent. And helping children, a lot of children, like you say, will go into bad behaviors because they need attention so badly and they don't know how to get it. So that affects their friendships and then how they learn at school. So we really need to help those children so that they can have a much better life.
So for a parent who is listening now and might possibly deeply introspect and realize that they themselves were not parented well and in turn are not parenting very well, where exactly do they go? Do they go to neurofeed therapists such as yourselves, or where do they start with their own children, knowing that at this point I probably might not be parenting well? What do I need to do for my child?
So I think, like I said, there's so many healing modalities. Not everything's going to work for everybody. I love neurofeedback. I see it work very, very quickly with children and with parents. Our webpage is brainharmonics.co.za, and we have multiple offices, and we also travel to people. So it is a good option because it's really quick.
Thank you very much, Kerry, for your time this morning. That was Kerry Rudman, a Brain Harmonics neurofeedback therapist.